Welcome to Unhurried Minds, a quiet space for gentle understanding, slow thought, and unforced reflection. Here, nothing is required of you. There is no instruction to follow, no insight you must remember, no change you are expected to make. You may listen closely or only vaguely. You may drift in and out of attention. You may fall asleep. All of these are part of the design. Tonight, we explore hope, not as motivation, not as optimism, not as a belief that things will turn out well, but as a cognitive process, one that emerges quietly in the mind, often without effort and sometimes without conscious awareness. Hope is frequently misunderstood. In everyday language, it is treated as something we do, something we hold on to, something we try to maintain, or something we are told to have more of. Psychologically, however, hope behaves very differently. It is not sustained through force. It does not respond well to pressure, and it does not arise from constant reassurance. Instead, hope appears most reliably when the mind is allowed to rest, to imagine gently, and to remain open without urgency. In many ways, hope is not an emotion at all. It is a mode of perception, a way the mind quietly relates to time, to uncertainty, and to the unknown. Throughout this episode, we will explore hope as something the brain naturally produces when conditions are right, much like calm, much like sleep, much like understanding. We will not encourage you to believe in anything. We will not ask you to visualize success. We will not frame hope as a reward for positive thinking. Instead, we will look at how hope has emerged across cultures, across centuries, and across individual lives as a subtle cognitive adaptation, a way the human mind stays oriented when certainty is unavailable. As you listen, allow your body to remain still. Let your breathing find its own rhythm without correction. If your thoughts wander, that is expected. If images arise, they do not need interpretation. If sleep begins to arrive, you do not need to resist it. Nothing here depends on staying awake. Hope does not require vigilance. It arrives most easily when attention softens. Chapter 1: Hope as a way of orienting in time. From a psychological perspective, hope begins not with belief but with time. The human brain is uniquely adapted to move back and forth along an internal timeline, revisiting memory, anticipating possibility, and constructing continuity between what has been and what has not yet occurred. This capacity is not optional. It is built into how the mind organizes experience. Even when you are resting, even when you are doing nothing at all, the brain quietly maintains a sense of before and after. Hope emerges within this temporal structure, not as a prediction, but as an orientation. To hope is not to expect a particular outcome. It is to remain open to the existence of a future. This distinction matters. When hope is framed as expectation, it becomes fragile. It rises and falls with circumstances. It collapses under disappointment. But when hope is understood as an orientation toward time itself, it becomes remarkably stable, even in uncertainty, even in difficulty, even in periods when nothing appears to be changing. Psychological research has shown that humans do not require optimism to sustain hope. What they require is continuity. A sense that experience is still unfolding, that time has not closed in on itself. This is why hope often persists, even when evidence is limited. The mind is not asking, will this turn out well? It is asking something quieter, is the story still moving? As long as the answer is yes, hope remains possible. In this sense, hope functions less like a feeling and more like a background condition. It shapes how uncertainty is perceived. Without hope, uncertainty feels threatening, a void, a collapse, an ending. With hope present, uncertainty becomes spacious, not reassuring, not comforting, but open. This openness allows the nervous system to remain flexible. Rather than locking into vigilance or collapsing into resignation, the mind stays gently responsive. Importantly, this does not require conscious effort. Hope is not generated by telling yourself, that things will improve. In fact, excessive reassurance can interfere with hope by forcing the mind into specific outcomes. The brain prefers possibility over certainty. Possibility keeps time alive. Across cultures, this orientation toward time has been symbolized in remarkably similar ways. Light appearing at the horizon, seeds buried beneath soil, journeys that continue beyond the visible path. These metaphors persist, not because they guarantee outcomes, but because they preserve movement. They remind the mind that not all futures are visible from the present moment. Psychologically, this is crucial. The brain cannot tolerate the idea that nothing lies ahead. When the future is perceived as closed, the nervous system shifts into defensive states, hypervigilance, numbness, or withdrawal. Hope, by contrast, keeps the future permeable. It does not insist on improvement, it allows for emergence. This is why hope often appears most strongly during rest. When effort subsides, the mind naturally begins to imagine, not vividly, not forcefully, but softly. Small variations, subtle alternatives, unspecified possibilities. This quiet, imaginative activity is not fantasy. It is a regulatory function. By keeping time open, the mind maintains psychological balance. As you listen now, you may notice moments where attention drifts forward, not toward plans, but toward an undefined sense of later. This is not distraction, it is the mind orienting itself. Hope does not announce its arrival. It simply keeps the inner horizon intact. Chapter 2. The brain's capacity to imagine without demand. Hope is sustained not by certainty, but by the mind's ability to imagine without instruction. This capacity is subtle, and it operates most clearly when the brain is not being directed toward a specific outcome. Neuroscientifically, this function is closely associated with what researchers call the default mode network, a set of interconnected brain regions that become more active when attention is relaxed and external demands are minimal. Despite its name, the default mode network is not idle. It is active during rest, during daydreaming, during quiet reflection, and during the early stages of sleep. It is here that the mind gently explores possible futures, reorganizes memory, and maintains a sense of narrative continuity. Importantly, this exploration is not goal-driven. The brain does not ask, what should happen next? It asks something softer, what could happen? This distinction is essential to understanding hope. When imagination is forced, when it is tasked with producing reassurance of success or certainty, the nervous system often tightens. The mind shifts into evaluation mode. Thoughts become repetitive. Possibility narrows. Hope diminishes under these conditions. By contrast, when imagination is allowed to wander freely without evaluation or outcome pressure, the brain maintains flexibility. Possibility remains open. Psychological studies of future-oriented thinking consistently show that humans benefit not from detailed forecasting, but from vague, non-specific future imagery. Specific predictions increase anxiety. General openness supports regulation. Hope, then, does not arise from visualizing success in detail. It arises from maintaining a sense of openness about what lies ahead. This is why hope often feels quiet. It does not announce itself with excitement or certainty. Instead, it appears as a background sense that time continues to unfold. In sleep-adjacent states, this process becomes especially visible as the mind begins to loosen. Its grip on linear thought images may arise briefly. Not scenes, not plans, but fragments. Light through a window, movement along a path, a door not yet opened. These images are not messages. They do not require interpretation. They are signs that the brain is maintaining its future-oriented capacity without strain. From a developmental perspective, this ability appears early in life. Children often demonstrate hope without language for it. They do not predict outcomes. They do not calculate likelihood. They simply assume that tomorrow exists. This assumption is not naive. It is neurological. The human brain is built to expect continuation. Trauma, prolonged stress, and chronic uncertainty can disrupt this process. When the future feels consistently unsafe, the brain reduces imaginative activity. As a protective measure, hope does not disappear entirely, but it becomes quiet, conserved, often hidden beneath vigilance. Importantly, restoring hope does not require persuading the mind that things will improve. It requires restoring conditions where imagination can function again. These conditions are simple: reduced demand, predictable rhythm, periods of rest without evaluation. And this is why hope often returns during moments of calm rather than moments of effort. When the nervous system softens, the default mode network resumes its work. The mind begins to imagine again. Not vividly, not forcefully, but gently. This gentle imagination is not optimism. It does not deny difficulty. It does not promise resolution. It simply keeps the future permeable. As you listen now, notice whether your own mind drifts forward in small, indistinct ways. You do not need to hold these thoughts. You do not need to examine them. Their presence alone is sufficient. Hope does not demand attention. It emerges when attention is released. In this way, hope behaves much like sleep itself. It cannot be commanded, cannot be forced. But when conditions are right, it arrives on its own. Chapter 3. Hope in the presence of uncertainty. Hope is most often misunderstood when life becomes uncertain. In these moments, hope is frequently treated as a fragile object, something that must be protected, maintained, or defended against doubt. Psychologically, however, hope does not require certainty to survive. In fact, certainty can undermine it. The human mind is not designed to function best in environments where outcomes are fixed and guaranteed. It is designed to adapt within conditions of partial knowledge. Uncertainty, when it remains within tolerable bounds, keeps the cognitive system flexible. It allows attention to shift, expectations to soften, and imagination to remain active. Hope lives within this space, not because uncertainty is pleasant, but because it preserves possibility. When outcomes are entirely known, the mind stops exploring. When outcomes are entirely unknowable, the mind may retreat. Hope exists in the middle ground, where the future is unclear but not closed. Neuroscientifically, this balance is reflected in how the brain manages prediction. The brain is constantly forecasting, not to guarantee accuracy, but to reduce surprise. When predictions are violated repeatedly, the nervous system becomes alert. When predictions are rigid and inflexible, the nervous system becomes brittle. Hope functions as a soft prediction. It does not insist on a particular future. It allows the brain to prepare without committing. This is why hope can coexist with realism. One does not need to deny difficulty to remain hopeful. One only needs to avoid collapsing the future into a single narrative. In psychological terms, hope preserves narrative multiplicity. It allows more than one story to remain possible. This is especially important during prolonged periods of stress. When challenges persist, the mind often seeks closure. It attempts to resolve uncertainty by assuming the worst or by disengaging entirely. Both strategies reduce cognitive load, but at a cost. They narrow time. Hope resists this narrowing. It does so quietly, without argument. Rather than saying, "Things will get better," hope simply refuses to say, "This is the end of the story." This refusal is subtle. It may appear as curiosity, as patience, as the willingness to wait. In many cases, hope does not feel like a positive emotion at all. It may feel neutral, or calm, or barely noticeable. This is not a failure of hope. It is a sign that hope is functioning as a regulatory process rather than an emotional state. Cultures throughout history have recognized this distinction. Stories of endurance rarely focus on triumph or resolution. They focus on continuation, journeys that proceed without certainty, light carried through darkness, waiting that is not passive but open. These narratives endure because they align with how the human mind manages uncertainty. Hope does not erase fear. It coexists with it. Fear prepares the body. Hope preserves the horizon. When fear dominates entirely, time collapses into immediacy. Everything becomes urgent. The future disappears. Hope restores distance. It allows the mind to step back, to breathe, to remain oriented, even when answers are unavailable. This is why hope often emerges in quiet moments rather than dramatic ones. In stillness, the nervous system settles. Threat detection recedes slightly. The mind regains access to its broader temporal map. You may notice this yourself. In moments of rest, when effort pauses, the future sometimes feels less heavy, not brighter, not clearer, just less constricted. This easing is not denial, it is regulation. Hope is the mind's way of maintaining equilibrium in the face of incomplete information. As you listen now, you do not need to search for hopeful thoughts. You do not need to reassure yourself about anything at all. Simply notice whether uncertainty feels a little wider, a little less compressed. That widening, even if slight, is the shape of hope at work. Chapter 4. Hope is not optimism. Hope is often confused with optimism. In everyday language, the two are treated as interchangeable. But psychologically, they operate very differently. Optimism is outcome-focused. It leans toward expectation. It asks the mind to anticipate improvement. Hope does not. Hope does not require improvement to remain present. This distinction is essential. Optimism depends on prediction. It functions by estimating likelihood. When circumstances worsen, optimism collapses quickly, not because the mind has failed, but because prediction has limits. Hope does not rely on prediction. It relies on openness. Where optimism says, "This will turn out well," hope says something quieter, "This is not finished." Psychologically, optimism narrows attention. It pushes the mind toward a specific future. It reduces ambiguity. It seeks reassurance. Hope preserves ambiguity. It allows multiple futures to remain possible at once. This makes hope more durable. Under stress, when optimism fades, hope often remains. Not as confidence, but as permission. Permission for time to continue. Permission for meaning to emerge slowly. Permission for outcomes to remain undefined. Modern culture often pressures people to be optimistic. This pressure is subtle, but psychologically taxing. Being optimistic requires effort. It requires emotional regulation, belief maintenance, and repeated self-correction. Hope does not. Hope is metabolically inexpensive. It does not ask the nervous system to elevate mood or suppress fear. It simply prevents closure. This is why hope can coexist with sadness, fatigue, and doubt. A person may say, "I don't feel positive," and still be hopeful. The presence of grief does not eliminate hope. The presence of despair sometimes does. But despair is not sadness. Despair is temporal collapse. It is the sense that the future has ended. Hope resists this collapse without argument. It does not persuade the mind. It keeps the door unlocked. This is why hope is often felt, not as uplift, but as space. Space in which emotion can move. Space in which identity can shift. Space in which time still flows. As you rest here, notice whether you feel pressure. To feel anything at all. If that pressure softens even slightly, hope is already present. Chapter 5. Stories, meaning, and the continuity of self. Hope is sustained not only by imagination, but by story. The human mind does not experience life as a series of isolated moments. It organizes experience narratively, linking past, present, and future into a coherent sense of self. This narrative capacity is not literary, it is neurological. Through story, the brain answers a fundamental question: who am I across time? Hope depends on this continuity. When a person feels disconnected from their past or unable to imagine themselves in the future, hope becomes difficult to access. Not because the future is bleak, but because the self feels fragmented. Psychologically, hope emerges when the mind can still say, this story is ongoing. Importantly, the content of the story does not need to be positive. Stories of endurance, adaptation, and survival often carry more hope than stories of success. What matters is not outcome, but continuation. In moments of difficulty, people often lose hope, not because circumstances worsen, but because their internal narrative collapses. The story stops making sense. Events feel random, disconnected, or meaningless. Hope is restored, not by rewriting the story, but by reconnecting its threads. This is why meaning plays such a central role in hope. Meaning does not require explanation. It requires coherence. The mind needs to feel that experiences, however difficult, belong to a larger pattern. This pattern does not need to be understood. It only needs to exist. Across cultures, hope is often preserved through shared stories. Myths, histories, and collective memories serve as scaffolding for individual experience. They remind the mind that others have lived through uncertainty, that time continues, and that identity is not erased by disruption. Even in modern psychology, this narrative function remains central. Therapeutic approaches that support hope rarely focus on changing beliefs. They focus on restoring a sense of personal continuity, helping individuals locate themselves within a story that still moves forward. This does not mean reframing events as beneficial or necessary. It means allowing experiences to be held without breaking the narrative entirely. Hope lives in that holding. It is present when the mind can say, this is part of my life, not the end of it. Importantly, this process does not require effort. Stories reorganize themselves naturally during rest, reflection, and sleep. As the brain integrates memory, it looks for patterns. It connects fragments. It restores sequence. This is why unresolved experiences often feel lighter after sleep. The mind has quietly worked to place them within a larger narrative frame. Hope often returns in these moments, not as excitement, but as a sense of continuity restored. You may notice this when listening quietly. Memories may arise briefly, not demanding attention. They may drift in and out. This is not rumination. It is the mind maintaining its story. Hope does not ask that the story be pleasant. It asks only that the story continue. As long as the narrative remains open, the future remains accessible. In this way, hope is less about believing and more about belonging. Belonging to time, belonging to a story, belonging to a self that is still unfolding. As you rest here, you do not need to make sense of anything that arises. The mind knows how to weave meaning without instruction. Hope is present whenever the story remains unfinished. Chapter 6. How humans have carried hope across time. Long before psychology existed as a discipline, the humans understood hope through metaphor, not explanation, but image. Across cultures, hope has rarely been described as certainty or confidence. It has been described as light, as seeds, as journeys, as waiting. These metaphors persist because they mirror how the mind experiences time. A seed does not guarantee growth. It only preserves potential. Light at the horizon does not promise arrival. It only signals direction. Waiting, in many traditions, is not passive. It is an orientation, a way of remaining open without forcing resolution. Hope appears in myths, not as triumph, but as continuation. Journeys that do not end quickly. Exiles that do not erase identity. Darkness that does not close the story. These narratives function psychologically as temporal anchors. They remind the mind that uncertainty is survivable, that time has carried others before. Even today, people often describe hope using inherited imagery without realizing it. Something ahead. Not the end. Still a path. These phrases are not accidental, and they reflect the brain's reliance on metaphor to maintain future orientation when logic cannot. Hope does not need explanation. It needs symbolic continuity. This is why quiet storytelling is so effective for sleep and rest. It aligns with the mind's oldest tools for holding time open. As you listen now, you are participating in that same human tradition, not learning something new, but remembering something old. Hope has always been carried this way, quietly, indirectly, without demand. Chapter 7, Hope as a quiet regulator of the nervous system. Hope is often discussed as if it belongs primarily to thought. In reality, hope is deeply physiological. It influences how the nervous system responds to uncertainty, how the body allocates energy, and how attention moves through time. From a regulatory perspective, hope functions less like an emotion and more like a buffer. It softens extremes. When hope is absent, the nervous system tends to polarize. It may shift into heightened vigilance, constant scanning, anticipation, and tension. Or it may collapse into withdrawal, numbness of fatigue and disengagement. Hope moderates these states, not by eliminating threat, but by preventing the system from concluding that threat is permanent. This distinction matters. The body can tolerate difficulty when it perceives it as temporary, even when the duration is unknown. Hope preserves this sense of temporariness. It allows the nervous system to remain responsive rather than rigid. Neuroscientifically, this moderation is reflected in how the brain balances sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. Hope does not force relaxation. Instead, it allows activation to rise and fall naturally. The body prepares when needed. It rests when possible. This flexibility is a hallmark of psychological health. Importantly, hope does not require a conscious belief that things will improve. It requires only that the system does not lock into finality. This is why hope can coexist with exhaustion. A person may feel tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed and still retain hope. The presence of hope is not measured by energy or enthusiasm. It is measured by plasticity, the ability to shift states. Hope keeps the system from becoming stuck. This regulatory role becomes especially visible during calm, repetitive activities, gentle walking, listening to quiet narration, resting without expectation. In these states, the nervous system receives consistent low-demand signals. Threat detection subsides. The body begins to recalibrate. Hope often returns here, not because the mind is convinced, but because the body feels less cornered by time. When the body is no longer bracing, the future feels less compressed. Space returns. This space is not emotional uplift. It is room to breathe. Hope thrives in that room. This is why rest is not a luxury. In psychological recovery, it is a prerequisite. Without rest, the nervous system cannot access the regulatory processes that allow hope to emerge. No amount of positive thinking can substitute for this. Hope is not imposed from the top down. It emerges from the bottom up, from rhythm, from safety cues, from predictability and gentleness. As you listen now, notice the steadiness of the moment. Nothing is changing quickly, nothing is demanded. This steadiness is itself a signal. It tells the nervous system that time is not collapsing, that the present moment is sufficient. Hope often arrives quietly in such moments, as a subtle easing, a softening of urgency. You do not need to feel it. Its work continues, whether noticed or not. Hope regulates, even in silence. As this regulation unfolds, it is worth noticing how little effort is involved. The nervous system does not require persuasion in order to settle. It does not need reassurance about what will happen next. It only needs to sense that it is not trapped in immediacy. Hope provides this signal quietly. When the body detects that time has not collapsed, muscle tone softens, breath deepens without instruction, attention widens slightly, instead of narrowing toward threat. This widening is subtle. It may not register as relief. It may not feel calming in any dramatic sense. Often it feels neutral, and neutrality in a dysregulated system is already a form of regulation. The nervous system is most strained, not by fear itself, but by the belief that fear will not end. Hope interrupts that belief without confronting it. It does not argue with fear. It does not override vigilance. It simply prevents permanence. In this way, hope allows the body to stay responsive rather than rigid. Responsive systems recover more easily. They move between states without becoming stuck. This is why hope often becomes noticeable. Only in hindsight. A moment where tension eased slightly. A night where sleep arrived unexpectedly. A day that felt less compressed, without any clear reason why. These shifts are not coincidences, they are signs that the nervous system has regained access to time, not future planning, not prediction, just continuation. As you remain here, you do not need to scan your body for signs of relaxation. Regulation does not announce itself. It happens beneath awareness, adjusting rhythms quietly, making small corrections that do not require attention. Hope supports this process by removing urgency. When urgency fades, the body no longer has to brace. Energy redistributes. The system breathes. This is not a peak state. It is a baseline returning. And from this baseline, sleep becomes more likely, rest becomes deeper, and recovery becomes possible. Hope does not push the system forward. It allows the system to stop holding itself together so tightly that easing, even if brief, is enough. Chapter 8. Rest, Permission, and the Unforced Future. As this exploration draws toward rest, it is helpful to return, not to ideas, but to permission. Throughout this episode, nothing has been asked of you. No belief has been required, no outcome has been proposed, no effort has been demanded. This, too, is part of the psychology of hope. Hope does not emerge through instruction. It does not respond to pressure. It does not grow louder when it is chased. Hope appears when the mind is allowed to stop concluding, when the future is left unfinished. Across everything we have explored, time, imagination, uncertainty, story, and regulation, the same pattern has quietly repeated. Hope is not something added. It is what remains. When nothing is forced, when certainty loosens, the mind does not collapse. It opens. This opening does not need to feel positive. It does not need to feel reassuring. Often, it barely feels like anything at all, and that is enough. Hope is not an emotion you must recognize, and it is not a thought you must hold. It is simply the absence of closure. The future for now has not been sealed, and the nervous system understands this without explanation. As you rest here, you may notice that the mind no longer reaches forward with urgency. Thoughts may slow, they may thin, they may begin to dissolve into something less defined. This is not loss of focus. It is the mind returning to a more natural rhythm, a rhythm that does not require vigilance, a rhythm that does not require resolution. You do not need to stay awake to complete this. You do not need to remember what was said. Nothing important depends on holding on. If sleep arrives, it is not an interruption. It is the continuation of the same process. The mind does its most integrative work when attention softens. Hope does not leave. When consciousness fades, it remains quietly intact, woven into memory, into story, into the body's sense of time continuing. There is nothing further to anticipate. No conclusion waiting ahead, only the steady movement of moments unfolding without demand. You may rest here as long as you need. Time is not pressing forward. The future does not need to be decided tonight. It can remain open, unforced, and still very much alive.